What's happening, everyone? It is Giblets at Critical Miss. This is my first video of the new year. What I thought I'd do is, we've been talking about doing D&D content or other content that isn't video games for quite a while, so I thought I'd give it a jump start, see how it goes. So what we're going to do is we're going to be going through my campaign diary. And I don't have a physical one right now. I'm kind of working on that. I've got to buy a few folders and stuff, and been building it up. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start logging it weekly here. Hopefully, whenever I have a game at home. So me and my old group finally got together. I've been playing with these guys since I was 15, so 10 years now. The group dynamics changed quite a bit. A few people have left, a few people have joined, and then about 2014, 2015, we stopped playing for quite a while. Things got busy. We all kind of stopped talking for a bit, and we recently started getting back into it again. And the main difference is we've been playing 5th edition. And for these guys, only one other person, except for me, has played 5th edition, and it's a big jump from Pathfinder in the sense of 5th edition is a very simple system compared to Pathfinder, which is based off 3.5. And this thing is that basically they've changed a few rules. It's not as intimidating for new players. It's easier to get them in. It's more of a story based game now compared to it's a very numbers and tactical based one in Pathfinder when you look at the sheets. And with that, we all jumped in. We ran through Lost Mines of Phandelver till they got to Phandalin, and then I basically opened it up. I give them the chance to go to the island of Chult and start Tomb of Annihilation if they want. We'll cover that more in Campaign Diary 2, as that's when that happens. But for this one, we'll be talking about what happened when they played Lost Mines of Phandalin. And we'll go over the group dynamic first. We've got Copperface, who is a dwarf cleric of knowledge. We've got Celine, who is a moon elf of the Circle of the Moon druid. We've got Helwyr, who is a UNT pureblood wizard who is now a necromancer. Luckily, being a UNT tied into Tomb of Annihilation, which is what they're playing now, so that really worked out on a whim. And we've also got Bucket, who is our half-orc barbarian, he started off as like your typical barbarian of smash, and it's changed the dynamic quite a bit since I think it's great when people start playing as something that they're not used to. The player who played Bucket is used to playing wizards. The guy who plays Helwyr is used to playing barbarians and fighters, someone who's easy to play, and now he's dealing with all these cards because we're using card decks. And he's looking at them and he's like, oh man, there's so many things you can do with this. It's ridiculous, like the choices. Luckily with wizards, they start off with a finite number of spells, and that goes up and up and up as they find spell books or buy spells and level up. And the cleric and the druid have both played a mixture, so luckily it kind of fit in well. And they started off their campaign like any campaign starts. They started off in a tavern drinking with Gundren Rockseeker and Sildar Hallwinter, who were off to Phandalin to drop off a bunch of provisions, but they had to head up the night before, which was kind of strange. You'd think they'd want to go with them. They were like, listen, we'll pay you guys if you all take this shit for us, and you take it to Phandalin for us on these oxes and this wagon. And the players were like, yeah, sure, we're all drunk. Let's just take that stuff. Let's go. So they wake up the next morning. Sildar and Gundren left early in the morning, probably straight after drinking. They left, and they head off with this oxen that's been left for them. And as they're driving down the pathway to Phandalin, they notice 2 horses in the middle of the road, and they're like, well, hold on a minute. This road isn't used that much. Why are there 2 horses dead in the middle of the road? And they pull up, and Bucket gets off to go and examine it. Same with Copperface. Copperface kind of like sidesteps, doesn't move much. As they do, both sides, there are these groups of goblins. And this is where they first got their taste of how different 5th edition is to Pathfinder. So, in Pathfinder, enemies kind of work the same way that players do, as in like they get the same sort of actions, and at the end of their turn, it's the end of their turn. But with this, the way, if you've played Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and you haven't played Pathfinder, is so they work the same. But in this, goblins have this thing where they can run at you, shoot, and then if they're next to you or they're somewhere else, they can hide or disengage for a free action. As a bonus action, sorry, not a free action. So they can just go straight back to where they want to. And that is really annoying for the fact that, like, you're like pushing forward and you're like, geez, this is going well, and then suddenly they start running backwards and you're like, I've got to waste my movement moving closer to them again, and I've got to hit them, and you're getting further and further away, but they can move wherever they want to without worrying about you getting an attack of opportunity on them. And then they also things also get multi-attacks in this compared to that, where multi-attacks would generally happen when a player hit a milestone, and the enemies wouldn't really get them unless they were counted as a certain CR. So, you know, like, this is really difficult, and this is the thing with Lost Mind of Phandelver, is for an entry-level beginner box set, this is surprisingly deadly, and these guys figured that out quite quickly when these things were like... It describes that 2 of the goblins will stay back, while 2 of the goblins will engage with their swords, with their scimitars, and the other 2 will fire bows. And while goblins are chaotic in nature, I would say that they are also a bit intelligent in the fact that they'll know, that guy's firing off magic at my friend, maybe I should stop that. So they'll shoot arrows at the magic users who are squishier, and also it could break concentration on some of those spells for them as well. So that gets out the way. The barbarian, he's watching one of these ones disengage. It doesn't get very far though, and he throws one of his spears, and it's in some bushels and reeds, and he can just see the spear stuck out the top of him, and it's just like going through, just waving through, so he can see exactly where this goblin is, and he's like, let's just risk it, and starts throwing spears back at him and hoping he hits it. So I'm making him do disadvantage on this, and that's another thing that's changed, is disadvantage is he'll roll 2 dice and take the worst roll, and that's the same with advantage. You roll 2 dice and you get the best of that roll. This guy ends up dying, and they kill off 2 of the other goblins, and this one other goblin, he sees what the hell is happening here, and he's like, I don't want to deal with this. These guys these guys have just wiped out all my friends. One of them's casting Sacred Flame over and over again. He doesn't know what Sacred Flame is, but he can just see this giant green flame constantly going boom, boom, boom. He's getting Roy Mustanged at this point, and he just bolts it. I waste 2 movement actions just letting him run wherever he needs to go, and he does that. He wastes his go, and he gets into the bushes on the other side. And 2 of the players are still sitting, like Helwyr and Celine, the druid and the wizard, are still sitting on this wagon. So if they're going to need to use a movement action to get off it, and then they're going to have to move again. So they're not going to get as far as wherever this goblin is. Bucket is in the reeds after he chased down this other one, and Copperface was the driver, and he's just still standing next to this thing. So he could possibly move to it, but the probability is he won't want to leave his team on his own. And they all decide, we should probably find out what these horses are. So they go over and they're like, whoa, this has got Gundren's logo on, and Gundren is the cousin of Copperface, but the party doesn't really know. Actually, they do know, because these guys are playing with their flaws perfectly in check. Helwyr will not tell anyone any information that isn't needed, so he is very secretive. He is a hermit as well, so he'd prefer to just finish this and go straight back home. And Copperface, he is playing it where his flaw is he will tell everyone everything. So any information that comes up, if someone asks him, he'll be like, oh yeah, I can tell you that. And that does kind of ruin some things for them, but it is also good for other players. If he tries to rob something or something, he'll be like, I'm taking this, and he'll put it in his pocket instead of trying to rob it. And I can't remember the flaws of the other 2 characters, but they're kind of similar. And Celine is dragon touched, so she's terrified of dragons and hates them. So I think she'll probably get disadvantages if she comes across any dragons or dragon people, dragonborn. And then, so yeah, they're checking this stuff up, and they see Gundren's sigil on one of these satchels on one of the horses, and the other one is obviously Sildar's because he was going with him. And they're like, well, we could just carry on. Maybe they did get away and drop the stuff off and then come back. And Copperface is like, no, we've got to go. And we've got to go to this pathway and see where this goblin's going. And he easily convinces them, and they go, okay, let's go and see where this is going. So they carry on going, and they get to the cave, and I'll put a picture up like here of the cave. It's kind of big. The map looks small, but like each square is 10 by 10, so it's a lot bigger than you expect. And as they get there, there is an area to the east of them, which is like a bunch of bushes. And I explained to them, I was like, so there's this big dark cave with a stream coming out, and to the east of you there is this opening in a large bushed area that looks like it's been used quite a bit. And they just kind of gloss over that bit of information, and they go, let's just go in the cave. And if they'd gone to the other area, they would have known that there was 2 goblins there who were on guard and had just gone for a little wander. And these guys aren't being quiet about anything. They're talking to each other in character, and they're just walking straight into this cave. So these 2 goblins know what they're doing, and they decide to wait outside just in case the trap is sprung. And we'll go into the trap in probably a minute or 2. So when they get in this cave, they can go to the right, which is a little cave which has some wolves in it who are owned by these goblins. And they have the choice of going straight on and follow the stream upwards, which will take them on a loop basically, and onto a bridge, or they can go further up to a water cave. And they decide to go right first, and they go and see how these wolves are after I've described them. So they feel sorry for these wolves, and they cut them free, they feed them. Luckily the barbarian is well versed and proficient in animal handling, so he calms them down, feeds them some food, and they'll give him a little pet and let these wolves go. And then in the corner of the room they can see like this chute that goes upwards, and at first like, wait, why don't we climb it? And they're looking at it, and I'm like, it's kind of mossy in there, so you can climb it, but if you fall down you're going to take damage. And at that point the wizard and the druid goes, yeah, I'm out. And then the cleric was like, I can still do it. And then he looked at his sheet and he was like, I'm wearing quite heavy armor, so I've got some major disadvantage if I try to get up there in heavy armor. I don't think it's heavy. I think it could be medium for clerics. Could be wrong though. So the barbarian's like, I'm wearing like fucking nothing, like all barbarians do. They just wear a loincloth and just a strap for the weapon usually. This guy's got a maul and some spears, and that's it. And he's like, I'll go up, I'll go see what's up. So he climbs up, passes all of them with flying colours because acrobatics is one of his proficiencies. And he gets up and he's just staring, and he can see a giant fairy creature that looks kind of goblinoid, but he failed his check to see what it was, so he has no idea what this thing is. And he also sees a few goblins in this room and another wolf. And he's like, I can't fight these on my own. I better go back down, tell these guys about it. And he's really quiet about it, explains what's up there. And he's like, listen, there's this big hairy dude, and there is some goblins up there and a wolf. We need to be careful. So they go back the other way, and they're like, let's follow the stream up. We'll probably, since it's going upwards, loop around the corner at the end and get there. And they carry on walking. They all have a shit passive perception, so as they go up there they don't see the bridge, which has a goblin watching them on it, and they carry on walking. And the thing about this goblin is, as I was talking before, is he activates a trap, unfortunately for these players. What that trap is if he sees a player over the course of a turn or 2 in time, I was basically putting crosses every time they were taking steps, and I was asking them, and he got all the way to this other room, the water room at the end, and notified the goblins that work in that room, and was like, there are intruders down there, we've got to be careful. I've seen these guys, because this goblin was the goblin that they let go before by accident. And he's like, I've seen these guys, we need to get rid of them as quickly as possible. And what these goblins do, they go, oh, okay then. So they pull out the piece of wood on one of these water pools and just flood the whole cave system. And luckily for 2 of the players, the wizard and the barbarian, they were climbing up some jagged rocks on the side, which actually takes them up into another room that's connected to the bridge. But the other 2, the druid and the cleric, were standing down, so they got washed out and took some damage, and they were knocked prone at the end. But the 2 goblins outside were waiting for them, so straight away they were stabbed. Combat started. The other 2 players were still climbing, and then it took them a turn or 2 to decide if they should go and help them. During this time, the cleric and the druid are nearly dead, so that's not great. And they finally get out, kill these other 2 goblins, and they're like, we need to be careful. And they go in, and they're still just as noisy. They don't stealth up. And the thing with this trap is that goblin's back waiting on that bridge, and he goes, Great, they're not dead. Let's go back. So he goes back and sets it off again. This time it hits all of them. They're all washed out. And there's only 2 charges on this, so it doesn't happen again. But they're very wary about going back, and they're like, listen, we're just climbing those jagged rocks. We're not going to go back up that path now. And we're going to see where that takes us. So they go up, and they start walking through this area. They've got to do a few tests because they weigh more than a certain amount. It can break on them, so they're very careful about that. And as they get up there, they see about 6 goblins. One of them looks completely different to me. I described him as with green, instead of green skin, he had grey skin with these red eyes. And he was sitting on a chair, smoking up in the corner and having a beer. And these are the ones who are just sitting around a fire eating some rats on sticks, basically. And the players are like, this isn't good. And they just go straight in and are like, let's just go fight them. So they go in and start fighting these goblins. And it doesn't go so well because Yemek, who is the goblin leader, the grey one, reveals that he has someone in the corner who's got a burlap sack over his head. And as he reveals who it is Sildar, who has been stripped down. He's got nothing left. He's quite beaten up. And he grabs him and holds him over the edge and goes, you're going to help me kill my leader because I do not like him one bit. He treats us like crap. Or I'm going to kill this guy. And the players are like, whoa, let's slow down at this point. They slow down the combat, but Celine luckily has some abilities as a moon druid, as a moon elf, I think it is actually, not a moon druid. I'll check that out and put whichever one it is up here. And basically can sneak as long as it's dark and is counted as hidden. So she's sneaking around the back of Yemek at this point, and the other players are trying to distract them. And as this happens, Celine gets behind. And actually, no, this didn't happen that way. The way it happened was at the start of combat, because he was on a ledge, the cleric, the dwarven cleric, tossed the moon elf up because she was really light, and she landed over there. And as that happened, that's when she snuck round, and now we're all caught up of what actually happened in those recounts. See, this is the great thing about this sort of thing. Matt Colville did a video about this where when you're talking about a campaign, you're talking about it from your point of view, and it's going to change in your mind how you pictured things compared to if I asked the players what happened, it could be completely different how they interpreted it, and I love that about D&D. And yeah, so this player is now up on this ledge, like sneaking behind Yemek at this point, and he's still holding Sildar at the back, and she gets off an attack on him, and he goes, I see how it is. You don't want this deal, do you? Fine. And just lets go of Sildar. And he drops down and takes a bunch of damage. He's knocked unconscious. Luckily, I was tallying death and death saves because I like this character of Sildar. I'm probably going to bring him back in the future, even in Tomb of Annihilation. I've got some plans for it, maybe. And the players bring him back to life after they fought the rest of these goblins and killed them. And they find a few nice little items on him, some like a gold tooth and things like that. Small things off Yemek. And Sildar's like, listen, I don't know where Gundren is. They've took him somewhere separate. I heard them talking about some place called Cragmore. We need to go and find Gundren. It is imperative that we do. We need to get out of here first, though. And the players are like, listen, we wanna finish our business here. Sildar, we wanna go and find Gunther. And I did say Gunther. I meant to say Gunther for the fact that Copperface is Gundren's cousin, but he doesn't remember Gundren's name, so it's always Gunther, Gunfellow, Gunthorpe. He will just call him a Gun. Anything which begins with Gun, basically, he'll get named. And with that, they carry on through. Sildar apprehensive, but these guys have given some items to use as well, like one of the goblin scimitars and things like that. And as they get through, they notice the goblin on the bridge, and he just kind of stares at them. He's got no gear at this point either. He dropped it all next to where the other guys are, and he's just looking at them and then drops his stuff and just goes bye-bye and just runs. And this infuriates the player who's playing Copperface, the cleric. He's like, this guy's gone away from us twice now. That was the same goblin, right? At this point he wasn't actually. I had just decided after he said that, I was like, yeah, he looks similar. He's probably the same goblin. And this player was just like, I need to kill that goblin. He keeps getting away and this is unfair. And the other player started laughing and was just like, it's kind of like a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner thing at this point. And they get to the next area, and it's the area with the water pools. And they fight their way through, kill them guys, and get to the next room. but none of the goblins got through except for the one who ran straight to the leader and told them exactly what was coming. So when they got there, it looked quiet. They're like, what's happening here? And sitting on this bony throne in the corner of the room is this bugbear, and they don't know what a bugbear is right now until one of them asks about it. And they're like, shit, this is a bugbear. This guy is the leader of these guys, and this guy is called Clog. And he talks in like he's like, Clog, me Clog is greatest bugbear there is. And probably a bit of a deeper voice like this. And he has a pet wolf, and that's the wolf that is there. And straight away, this wolf goes for one of the characters, and a bunch of other goblins start to ambush them. And Bucket, the barbarian, just cuts the wolf in half. He's like, I want to cut that wolf in half. And I'm just like, you've got a maul, you can't do that. And he's like, okay, I want to hit it in the stomach. And it's like, he just basically destroys this wolf. And the thing with Clog is he is running scared at this point because of what happened. But he doesn't have enough time to react, because by the time of his next turn, Bucket goes first again, and he runs at this guy. He's like, I am not letting this big motherfucker get out the way and ruin this for us. So he goes after him, and these guys are all making sure that the goblins are staying away from Bucket so Bucket can do enough damage to Clog as this is going on. And it's all going fine until suddenly Clog gets a sweet critical right on Bucket, and he goes to 0 health, and Clog is looking really beat up at this point as well. I think he only had like 4 HP at this point. And I was like, oh no, this could be a death already, and this is only the first session. And luckily it wasn't, because as we were working it out, the player who was playing Bucket, the Half-Orc Barbarian, is looking at Sheen, was like, wait a minute, Half-Orcs have an ability, right? And I was just like, yeah, you've got a few abilities, which one is it? And he was just like, I think it's Half-Orc Resilience or something like that. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But basically, the way a Half-Orc works is, once per day, if they are taken below 0 hit points, they go to 1 instead. So we had this really cool moment where the way I described it was Clog brought down this giant club and just hit him in the head. And all the party members were like, that's going to kill him. But the way we described it was, he just looked up as all this blood was just pouring down his head, like evilly, like a Conan the Barbarian look, just this glare, as he raised his maul up on his next turn and hit back. And I got him to describe what happened, and basically he was just like, I just want to destroy him at this point. So he just crushes Clog's head and then just starts going to town on his body as well. But there's 2 goblins left, and these goblins don't want to stay here. One of them gets picked off, but the other one's the same goblin who got away before. And this one was predetermined, because I wrote down on each one of them, like on health, and I was like, escaped goblin. And somehow this one goblin managed to stay out, and Copperface was like, it's him. I know it's him. He's got to be the goblin who keeps getting away. Sacred Flame misses. Like, this goblin passes his save and runs for the chimney that Bucket climbed up before, and he just jumps down. Doesn't care about damage or anything like that. Luckily, I think I rolled like a 2 on damage, so we were still alive. And Copperface, on his next turn, just runs up to it. Sacred Flame misses again. And he just keeps Sacred Flaming, and the party are like, listen, he's down there at this point. And I just go, he just looks up while you're doing this and goes, bye-bye, and then runs off. And that infuriated him. Like, this is the 3rd time this one goblin has gotten away from him. And at this point, this is when I gave him a name. His name is Jibbers. And he is still part of the story right now, where we're up to in our campaign. And the party was just like, why is this goblin still alive? We need to go and find out where this is. So at this point, I'd give them all the secret roles that are in Lost Mines of Phandalin. So Celine's one was to kill the dragon, which we'd worked in, was about her backstory. We've got the Bucket needs revenge on the red brand. We've got Hellweir, who is, I forget what Hellweir's was. He didn't look into it. I think it was to gain knowledge or something like that. And Copperface's was to rebuild Phandalin eventually. But at this point, he was just like, the only thing I care about is killing that goblin. We need to go and find out where the goblins are, which luckily is where Gundren is as well. Well, should be. well, he should be there, but he's not going to be anyway. But because we need to go and find out where he is. We're going to find Gundren. This is what this is about. But at this point, it wasn't about finding Gundren. This was definitely not about finding Gundren. This was about pure revenge on this one goblin who kept escaping. So they grab all the loot they can. They find a bunch of these boxes with these giant blue and blazing shields on with a lion on, and they take it all. Like, we could open our own shop, and I was just like, one of you guys knows this is from a provisions place and like an arms place in Phandalin. And they have stations all over the world, so you could return it if you want to, or you could do what you want. Copperface is quite rich as well, so I think he had started with like 200 gold. It was ridiculous, and he still has that because he's very frugal with his money at the moment. And they all set off, and Saldar's like, we should go and stay in the tavern in Phandalin, drop this stuff off. And as they get to Phandalin, they're welcomed and all hailed over. And then this guy's like, have you seen Gundren? He hasn't shown up. And they describe what's happened, and I'm like, let's end the session there. You guys have gotten to Phandalin, because I was waiting for a Tomb of Annihilation book to show up, and I was going to start the campaign at Tomb of Annihilation, but sadly couldn't. And we'll go more into that once the book had finally shown up. And was like, we're gonna reconvene, and these guys were really happy that we're all playing again, and talking about how Jibbers kept getting away, and he didn't have a name at this point. They were just like, that damn goblin, why did he keep getting away? And I'm just like, maybe it's because you guys kept saying that you wanted him dead, and sometimes to fudge the occasional roll. I only fudged one roll with Jibbers, and that was the one jumping down the hole. When he fired it off, one of them would have hit him, and it probably would have killed him. And I was like, no, this character needs to live. You need your own personal villains in games like this. And that was session 1 of this game. I've really enjoyed playing 5th edition, especially with my old group. I play with a new group. I play with the guys here at Critical Miss, with Sergeant Mooby, and with Vesper and his lovely girlfriend Amara, and our friend Chris, and we all have quite a bit of fun. I'll put a link down to Sergeant Mooby's Twitch stream where we play it. It's usually every Wednesday, but it's on hiatus at the moment. But yeah, we'll go into what happens in session 2 next week. Probably it'll be just a ramble like this that'll last like 20-30 minutes. Hopefully we'll go over what happened, because not much actually happened in session 2, but they had like the most fun they've had out of any of the sessions probably in session 2. But thanks, guys, for listening to me ramble about Dungeons and Dragons for 20-30 minutes. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed it, let me know down below. Tell me some of your highlights in your games as well. And we'll speak again soon. Bye.